Elvis Presley's manager, Colonel Tom Parker, originally planned the '68 special as a cozy Christmas show filled entirely with holiday carols. Elvis hadn't performed live in front of an audience for over 7 years before stepping onto the stage for the taping. The iconic black leather suit Elvis wore got so incredibly hot under the intense studio lights that production staff worried he might actually pass out. Director Steve Binder actively went against Colonel Parker's wishes for the show's content, creating significant tension behind the scenes. The powerful closing song, "If I Can Dream," was written in just a few hours specifically for Elvis after Binder discussed the recent assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. with the Duckner. Number 10. It was supposed to be a wholesome Christmas special. Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis Presley's longtime manager, had a very specific vision for Elvis's first television appearance in years. He pictured a gentle, family-friendly Christmas program. Think cozy sweaters, maybe a fake fireplace, and Elvis crooning traditional holiday tunes like Silent Night and Oh Holy Night. Parker envisioned something akin to the popular Andy Williams or Perry Como Christmas specials of the era, safe, uncontroversial, and designed to appeal to the broadest possible audience, maximizing merchandise opportunities like a soundtrack album filled with carols. He negotiated the deal with NBC and the sponsor Singer Sewing Machines based on this concept. The initial title floated was simply Elvis. Parker saw this TV special primarily as a promotional tool, a way to keep the Elvis brand visible during the holiday season, rather than a vehicle for artistic expression or a return to Elvis's rock and roll roots. He booked the studio time, arranged the sponsorship, and essentially presented the Christmas special concept to Elvis and the network as a done deal. He wanted Elvis to simply walk on set, sing the predetermined Christmas songs, wish everyone a Merry Christmas, and collect the paycheck. There was little room in Parker's plan for spontaneity, raw energy, or revisiting the sounds that had made Elvis a global phenomenon in the first place. He actively discouraged any ideas that deviated from his G-rated, holiday-themed concept, fearing it might alienate parts of the audience or damage the carefully carbued image he had built for Elvis during his movie years. The Colonel's focus was firmly on business and maintaining control over the Elvis Presley enterprise, and a straightforward Christmas show seemed the lowest risk, highest reward option from his perspective. He even specified the inclusion of a large on-stage sponsor logo for Singer. The contrast between Parker's initial saccharine concept and the electrifying show that ultimately aired could not be more stark, highlighting the creative battle that took place behind the scenes. The only remnant of Parker's original plan that made it into the final broadcast was the performance of Blue Christmas itself, delivered with a bluesy edge, far removed from a standard carol rendition. Number 9. The stand-up shows. Raw energy unleashed. While the intimate sit-down segments often get the most attention, the stand-up portions of the special were just as crucial in re-establishing Elvis's power as a live performer. These were filmed on a larger stage, sometimes with dancers and elaborate sets featuring Elvis backed by a large orchestra and vocal groups. This was Elvis, the showman, commanding the stage with a renewed intensity many hadn't seen since the 1950s. He performed high-energy versions of some of his biggest hits, including Heartbreak Hotel, Hound Dog, Jailhouse Rock, Don't Be Cruel, and All Shook Up. Dressed initially in the black leather suit, and later in other outfits like a striking white suit, Elvis moved with a freedom and swagger that had been largely absent from his movie roles. He incorporated karate-inspired moves, chops, kicks, and stances into his performance, adding a sharp, dynamic, and sometimes aggressive edge to his stage presence. These weren't the tentative hip swivels of the past. These were confident, stylized movements, reflecting his long-time interest in martial arts. The energy was palpable. You can see him feeding off the studio audience reactions, pushing himself further with each song. The arrangements were often updated, giving the classic hits a contemporary, powerful sound driven by the big band and pounding drums. There was no sense of merely going through the motions. Elvis attacked these songs with vigor, his voice strong and resonant. He interacted with the band, gestured dramatically, and fully inhabited the persona of the king of rock and roll. These segments demonstrated that Elvis could still captivate a large audience and handle complex stage productions, proving he was more than just a nostalgic act. He was a vital contemporary performer, ready to reclaim his throne. The sheer physical exertion was visible, sweat glistening on his face, yet his energy never seemed to flag. These stand-up performances were a declaration. Elvis was back, and he was ready to rock. Number 8. The Gospel Medley, Soulful Roots. Amidst the rock and roll energy and the big production numbers, a segment deeply rooted in Elvis's musical origins provided a powerful emotional core to the special. This was the Gospel Medley. Filmed as part of a larger production number initially set in a dilapidated building meant to represent his past, this segment saw Elvis, dressed in a two-piece burgundy suit, surrounded by the vocal group The Blossoms, featuring Darlene Love and other singers. The setting eventually shifted to resemble a church or revival meeting. Here, Elvis poured his heart into the music. He grew up singing the sounds that had always been a fundamental part of his musical DNA. The medley included classics like Where Could I Go But to the Lord, Up Above My Head, and Saved. Unlike some of the more choreographed parts of the show, this felt deeply personal and spontaneous. Elvis closed his eyes, swayed to the music, clapped his hands, and traded vocals with the Blossoms, clearly moved by the spirit of the songs. His voice soared with passion and conviction, demonstrating the depth and range that sometimes got overlooked in his rock or pop material. He wasn't just performing these songs, he was testifying. The joy and fervor were infectious, creating one of the most authentic and spiritually uplifting moments of the entire broadcast. It reminded audiences, and perhaps Elvis himself, of the powerful influence gospel music had on his style, evident in his vocal phrasing, his emotional delivery, and his sheer love for singing. The performance felt less like a staged TV number and more like an intimate glimpse into Elvis's soul, sharing the music that meant the most to him on a personal level. The interaction with the singers, the call and response sections, and the sheer unadulterated joy on Elvis's face made this segment a niche, fruiting a different but equally compelling side of his artistry. It was a heartfelt tribute to his musical roots, delivered with undeniable power and sincerity. Number 7. The Guitar Man, Production Number, Storytelling Through Song. The special didn't just feature Elvis singing his hits, it also included ambitious production numbers that used music to tell a story. The most notable of these was built around Jerry Reed's song, Guitar Man, which Elvis had recently recorded. This extended sequence effectively served as the opening narrative for the show, depicting the journey of a young musician hitchhiking his way to fame. Directed by Steve Binder, this segment was visually dynamic and creatively staged. It began with Elvis, guitar in hand, silhouetted against a large stylized Elvis sign made of lights. He performed Trouble, setting a defiant, rebellious tone. The sequence then transitioned into Guitar Man, following the singer as he travels, seeking gigs and navigating the challenges of the music world. The sets changed rapidly, depicting bus stations, cheap motels, and hostile barrooms. One memorable scene featured Elvis performing surrounded by skeptical, rough-looking characters in a simulated roadside dive. Another vignette used neon signs and stylized cityscapes. The sequence incorporated snippets of other songs too, like Little Egypt, weaving them into the narrative. It showcased Elvis not just as a singer, but as an actor within the musical framework, using his charisma and screen presence honed during his Hollywood years, but this time in service of a story closer to his own roots. The production design was modern for its time, using creative lighting, quick cuts, and stylized choreography, including the famous finger-pointing change of chord move during Guitar Man to create a cinematic feel. This number was a way to bridge the gap between Elvis's past and present, acknowledging his journey while presenting him in a fresh, contemporary context. It was a bold statement piece that established the show's ambitious scope and proved Elvis could handle complex, thematic material on television, far removed from the simple holiday special Colonel Parker had envisioned. It set the stage literally and figuratively for the raw energy that was to follow. Number 6. The reunion, Scotty Moore and DJ Fontana, back in the fold. A deeply significant aspect of the '68 special, particularly the intimate sit-down sessions, was the reunion of Elvis with two key members of his original band, guitarist Scotty Moore and drummer DJ Fontana. These were the musicians who had been with him from the very beginning at Sun Records, helping to craft the revolutionary sound that changed popular music forever. Their presence alongside Elvis for these informal jam sessions was more than just a nostalgic nod. It was a reconnection with his musical roots. After years of recording with studio musicians, often referred to as the Nashville A-Team for his movie soundtracks, performing live again with Scotty and DJ seemed to reunite something primal in Elvis. Scotty Moore, positioned just to Elvis's right, provided his signature crisp, clean guitar licks. The same fills and rhythms that had defined early hits like Heartbreak Hotel and Hound Dog. DJ Fontana, seated behind a minimal drum kit, laid down the steady swinging beats that had propelled those classic recordings. While original bassist Bill Black had tragically passed away in 1965, having Scotty and DJ there created a tangible link to Elvis's explosive beginnings. The chemistry between the three men was evident. They exchanged glances, smiles, and musical cues, falling back into the easy camaraderie of their early days, touring and recording together. Elvis visibly relaxed in their presence, often directing comments and jokes towards them. Their participation grounded the performance, stripping away the Hollywood gloss and reconnecting Elvis with the raw, bluesy, country-inflected rockabilly sound they had pioneered. For fans watching, seeing Elvis, flanked by these familiar faces, was a powerful symbol of his return to the music that truly mattered. It wasn't just Elvis performing, it was Elvis with his band, making music together in a way they hadn't in years. This reunion was a crucial element in the special's authenticity and its success in capturing the magic of Elvis's early career. Number 5. The controversy. The bordello scene. Not every part of the '68 special went off without a hitch or a raised eyebrow. One particular production number generated considerable controversy behind the scenes and almost didn't make it to air. This was the sequence sometimes referred to as the bordello or cat house scene, set to the song "Let Yourself Go." The number was part of a larger piece, exploring themes of temptation and sin fitting into the narrative arc that culminated in the gospel medley. Staged with stylized choreography and featuring Elvis interacting with female dancers in a setting suggestive of a turn-of-the-century house of ill repute, the segment was deemed too risque by the network executives at NBC and the sponsor singer. They worried about potential viewer complaints and felt the implications were inappropriate for a primetime television special in 1968, especially one featuring a star trying to shed a controversial past image. Director Steve Binder fought hard to keep the scene in the show, arguing it was artistically valid and essential to the overall narrative he was building. He believed it represented the carnal side of life that Elvis's music often addressed, providing a necessary contrast to the spiritual redemption found in the gospel segment. The sponsor, in particular, was adamant that the scene be cut, threatening to pull their funding. The disagreement became a major point of contention during the post-production process. Ultimately, a compromise was reached, but Binder had to make some edits to tone down the most suggestive elements. Even in its edited form, the sequence retained a sultry, slightly dangerous energy, shooting Elvis's sex appeal but within limits deemed acceptable for broadcast. The controversy highlighted the ongoing tension between artistic vision and commercial concerns, and the tightrope walk required to present Elvis's raw energy to a mainstream television audience after years of sign-hide movie roles. While perhaps not the most famous part of the special today, the fight over the "Let Yourself Go" sequence was a significant behind-the-scenes battle that underscored the risks Binder and Elvis were taking. Number 4. The look, that iconic black leather suit. Few images from Elvis Presley's entire career are as instantly recognizable or enduringly iconic as him clad in the tight black leather suit featured prominently in the '68 comeback special. Designed by Bill Belew, who would go on to create Elvis's famous jumpsuits of the 1970s, the suit was more than just clothing. It was a statement. It signaled a deliberate shedding of the clean-cut, wholesome image cultivated during his Hollywood movie years and a return to the raw, rebellious sensuality of his early rock and roll days. The suit consisted of a tight-fitting jacket with a high Napoleonic-style collar and matching pants. It hugged Elvis's frame, emphasizing his lean physique. He had reportedly lost weight specifically for the special, and accentuating his movements. The black leather itself evoked bikers, rebels, and rock and roll defiance, a stark contrast to the sweaters Colonel Parker had envisioned. Elvis wore the suit for the opening stand-up performance and, most famously, for the informal sit-down jam sessions. Under the intense heat of the television studio lights, however, the leather became incredibly uncomfortable. Elvis sweated profusely, the leather clinging to him. Crew members reported concerns that he might genuinely overheat or faint, especially during the longer sit-down segments where he was seated directly under the lights. Water was reportedly sprayed on him between takes to try and cool him down. Despite the physical discomfort, Elvis wore the suit with an undeniable charisma and confidence. It became a symbol of his reclaimed power and potency as a performer. The image of Elvis in black leather, sneering, sweating, and pouring his heart into his music is burned into the collective memory of popular culture. It wasn't just a costume, it was armor, a declaration, and a key visual element that announced the king's powerful return. Multiple copies of the suit were actually made for the production due to the wear and tear and the intense conditions. Number 3. The nerves, beeves, the confidence. Elvis's transformation on stage. Before the cameras rolled for the '68 special, Elvis Presley was reportedly experiencing intense stage fright. It had been over 7 years since his last live concert performance, a benefit show in Hawaii, in March 1961. In the interim, his career had been dominated by a relentless schedule of formulaic Hollywood movies and their accompanying soundtracks. He hadn't faced a live audience, hadn't performed his rock and roll hits with genuine fire in a very long time. The stakes were incredibly high. This television special was widely seen as a make-or-break moment for his career, a chance to prove his continued relevance in a musical landscape dramatically changed by the British invasion, psychedelic rock, and Motown soul. Director Steve Binder and others involved in the production noted Elvis's palpable nervousness during rehearsals and leading up to the taping sessions with the live studio audience. He worried about forgetting lyrics, about his voice holding up, about whether the audience would accept him after his long absence from the live stage. There were moments of self-doubt. Colonel Parker's initial insistence on a safe, bland Christmas show likely didn't help Elvis's confidence in pursuing a more challenging rock-oriented direction. However, something remarkable happened when Elvis actually stepped onto the stage, particularly during the intimate sit-down segments. Surrounded by his old bandmates Scotty Moore and DJ Fontana, and facing a small, enthusiastic studio audience just feet away, his initial nerves seemed to melt away, replaced by a growing confidence and visible enjoyment. He started joking with the band, telling stories, responding playfully to audience requests and comments. The performer inside him reigned. As he tore through electrifying versions of his classic hits, his voice strong, his movements sharp, the transformation was stunning. The vulnerability was still there, making the performance relatable, but it was now overlaid with the undeniable charisma and command of the Elvis the world remembered. This journey from apprehension to assurance, played out in real time on camera, added a layer of compelling human drama to the musical triumph. Number 2. The sit-down sessions. Intimate, unplugged, and legendary. Arguably the most celebrated and influential segments of the '68 comeback special are the sit-down performances. These were conceived by director Steve Binder as a way to capture Elvis in an informal, unrehearsed setting, reminiscent of the impromptu jam sessions he often had backstage or at home with friends. Instead of a large stage and orchestra, Elvis was seated in the center of a small, square stage resembling a boxing ring, surrounded on all sides by a live studio audience, sitting incredibly close. He was joined by his original guitarist, Scotty Moore, and drummer DJ Fontana, along with friends Charlie Hodge, providing acoustic guitar, harmony vocals, and water towels, and Alan Fortis, providing percussion by tapping on a guitar case. Initially planned as just one segment, these sessions proved so successful and captured such magic that they were extended and featured prominently throughout the special. Dressed in the iconic black leather suit, Elvis sat, legs often bouncing nervously at first, clutching a microphone. What unfolded was pure, unadulterated Elvis. He seemed to visibly relax in this intimate setting, bantering with the band and the audience, telling stories about his early career, and laughing at himself. The performances were loose, spontaneous, and electrifying. He ripped through raw, powerful versions of his classic hits like Heartbreak Hotel, Hound Dog, All Shook Up, That's All Right, Are You Lonesome Tonight, and Blue Suede Shoes, often starting and stopping songs, calling out chord changes and clearly enjoying the simple act of making music with his old friends. His voice was superb, powerful, nuanced, and full of emotion. The proximity of the audience created an electric atmosphere, with fans calling out requests and Elvis responding directly. These segments stripped away all the artifice, presenting Elvis Presley at his most essential, a magnetic performer with an incredible voice, deeply connected to his rock and roll and blues roots. It felt less like a television taping and more like being invited to the coolest, most exclusive jam session on the planet. The raw energy, the spontaneity, and the sheer charisma on display made these sit-down performances legendary, heavily influencing the unplugged trend decades later and providing the most compelling evidence that the king was well and truly back. Number 1. If I Can Dream. The powerful Finnel. The final performance of the '68 comeback special stands as one of the most powerful and poignant moments in Elvis Presley's entire career. The song, If I Can Dream, was written specifically for the show's finale, at the urgent request of director Steve Binder. Binder felt the special needed a strong closing statement, something that addressed the turbulent times of 1968, a year marked by the Vietnam War civil rights struggles and the assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy. Binder discussed these events and his feelings about them with Chucker's Walter Earl Brown, who primarily wrote musical scores for TV and film. Brown was initially hesitant, believing he couldn't write a song in the style Elvis usually performed. However, after Binder shared his thoughts on wanting a song about hope and understanding in troubled times, drawing parallels to King's famous "I Have a Dream" speech, Brown was inspired. He reportedly wrote the lyrics and basic melody in just a few hours. When Elvis first heard the demo, he was immediately struck by its message and power. He reportedly said, "I'm never going to sing another song I don't believe in. I'm never going to make another movie I don't believe in." He embraced the song wholeheartedly, seeing it as a way to express his own feelings about the state of the world for the performance. Elvis stood alone on the stage, dressed in a striking all-white suit, standing in front of the giant red letters "Elvu is" that had been featured earlier. He delivered the song with overwhelming passion and conviction. His voice soared, filled with raw emotion, pleading for a better world, for peace and understanding. He gestured emphatically, his body trembling with the intensity of the lyrics. It was a performance of staggering sincerity, far removed from anything he had recorded during his movie years. He poured every ounce of his being into the song, his face etched with emotion. The performance served as the emotional climax of the entire special, a message of hope delivered by an artist rediscovering his voice and his purpose. If I Can Dream became a significant hit, single for Elvis, and the performance itself is remembered as a defining moment, true his ability to convey deep emotion and connect with audiences on a profound level, ending the comeback special not just with rock and roll energy, but with a powerful, heartfelt plea for humanity.